All right, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great Thursday. It is time for Afternoon Live on the Maize and Blue Review. Weekdays at 1 o'clock, we are here, and we're a part of Rivals.com. And if it's Thursday, that means it's time to talk with the coach, Jim Scarcelli, the former Wolverine, who's all decked out today. We see him, and we are ready to mix it up a little bit on this glorious Thursday. Jim, how are you?
Hey, life is good. Always feeling good. My old Michigan sweater. This sucker's 30-some years old. Still feels like the day Big Johnny gave it to me back in the day over on State Street.
You're looking pretty good. Look like you got a collar underneath, almost for a second thought maybe you had a tie on, throw me off.
Those days are over.
Yeah, well, this is the off season here. How do you handle it? As a former player, you're somebody that countdown, gets the calendar and starts Xing it out until September the 3rd, or are you able to enjoy your spring and summer?
I'm looking at these spring. Oh yeah, I'm loving life now. Looking at these spring games. I was trying to size up the Spartans the other day. Looked at the Buckeyes, and maybe we can talk about that next week. But and then we've got the USFL going, so there's a lot of good football. I'm not a big baseball guy, but I'll watch my basketball and look at the NBA. But a lot of stuff athletically to keep us fired up.
I thought you worked down at Tiger Stadium. I figured you were a baseball guy back in the day.
I was there. I worked there, but it wasn't so much my love of baseball. It was a job and it led to things. But I would much rather be watching a football game or a basketball game. That's nothing against baseball. It's just it is what it is.
I hear you. Let's put up a screen on what we'll dive into here today. Some of it. We'll get into the nuances, the differences when it comes down to different fronts in college football and in pro football, for that matter, when you talk about a 3-4 defense and a 4-3 and what those guys as defensive ends or nose guards or defensive tackles, their different assignments, their different techniques up front. Also with Jay Wright, somebody that I know that you like, Scar, Jay Wright. So he might end up, that would be my guess, he would end up on your list. If I asked you to come up with 3 of your favorite college coaches of all time without a Michigan connection, I found it to be a difficult exercise. And we'll see how you did there. And then speaking of coaches, we want to go through the coaches. You started out at Michigan in the early 80s. Schembechler was the head coach. And then from there, you go to Moeller, you go to Carr, you go to RRod. You continue on to Brady Hoke, and then now to Jim Harbaugh. We'll ask about your different experiences and relationships with those head coaches of the Maize and Blue over the years. How's all that sound?
Sounds good, Denny.
All right, well, let's start with the 3-4 and the 4-3. So Michigan predominantly, it started last year with Mike Macdonald. Like that was the Ravens. They're a 3-4 defense. And Macdonald brought in, that concept. And then, of course, it's going to be talked about. We're a week away from the NFL draft. Aiden Hutchinson, whether he's going to go number 1 or number 2, he flourished in this 3-4 scheme. David Ajabo, not too shabby either on the other side. And now Michigan with their a new defensive coordinator in Minter, Jesse Minter. The continuity of the 3-4 will continue. How do you explain it? You don't have to explain it like I'm a 10-year-old or for the people that are watching that they're 10 years old, but maybe like we're 15 years old explaining the differences of a 3-4 and 4-3, other than having 3 guys with their hands down and 4 standing up there at the line of scrimmage. And obviously, 4 guys with their hands down if it was a 4-3. How is it different in your mind?
Denny, coaches have been trying different things, using different schemes, alignments, techniques since, for the last 150 years. And I've watched and looked at some of these different defenses. And sometimes they go out of style and then they come back in. The 3-4 was real popular. The Oklahoma, coaches refer to it as the Oklahoma, the 3-4. We call it the 5-2 at Michigan. Same thing. it had its era where it was real popular. Okay, for a good 20, 30-year period, it was real popular all over the country. Everybody ran the 3-4. And then then Jimmy Johnson in the Florida Hurricanes, and really the team that I remember hearing, got the 4-3 going. I mean, they was running in the pros. You know, Landry ran it with the Cowboys, but the 4-3. Now you don't have an outside linebacker. You just you put 4 big defensive linemen in, and you have 3 linebackers that can run. The 3-4, what we ran, you have 3 big defensive linemen, 2 big outside linebackers, and 2 linebackers. And those 2 outside guys will rush or drop. Okay, so it gives you, you play a guy over the center, and so anyway, there's strengths and weaknesses to both of these defenses. But let's just start with the 3-4. So in a 3-4 defense, the thing about both these defenses, Michigan runs both of them. Okay, we run both of them. We ran the 3-4 against Wisconsin and Iowa. We did a little bit at times against other people, but we run the 3-4, and we also run this 4-3 scheme. So in a 3-4, you'll normally have a big defensive lineman head up on the center. Okay, and this guy will be a 2-gap player. Now, that was when we played Wisconsin, you know, it would have been like a Mozzie Smith or it was Hinton. But he's going to be a 2-gap. He's going to play over the center, and he's got both gaps. The A gaps are the gaps either side of the center. And then you'll play 2 defensive tackles outside of the tackles, what we call 5 techniques. If you're lined up outside of the tackle, that's called the 5 technique. Okay. Football has numbering systems for alignments. 0 is head up on a center. Okay. But I'm going to try to stay with the 3-4. The 5 techniques will line up outside the tackles. So they will be C-gap players. The nose guard has both gaps. He has both A gaps. He is responsible for that. The linebackers in a 3-4 are B gap players. They're responsible for the gap between the guard and the tackle. The tackles are responsible for the C gap. That's between the tackle and the tight end, and the outside backers are responsible for the outside. That's your 3-4 basic alignment. In that front, you got to have a nose guard that can stuff a center and play both gaps. Both A gaps. And the reason you ask a center to do that, or a nose guard to do that, is because the center has to snap the ball. He's susceptible to. It's a little more difficult for him. So you can find a guy that can stuff a center and possibly play 2 gaps. Normally, defensive coaches don't ask defensive linemen to play 2 gaps. So there's your 3-4. You're going to have guys slanting. You're going to slant your defense also out of both these schemes. You're going to slant defensive linemen left, right. That was the old Michigan philosophy. Coach McCartney, I remember hearing that from day one on campus, that the Michigan philosophy was to give every defensive lineman a 3-way go. Left, right, straight ahead. You know what I mean, Danny?
That's your 3 technique. That's your 3 technique.
No, the 3 tech. I haven't even got into the 3 technique yet. I'm staying on the 3-4, but you have a 0 technique on the center. You have 2 tackles who are 5 techniques over the tackles, and then outside backers, and then linebackers over the guards. So that's your 3-4. There's no 3 technique in a 3-4. You have a 0, 2 5s, and 2 outside backers. Do you understand that?
I do now. Yeah, if I would have gotten that wrong at a test, I would have.
Okay, so now in the 4-3, and this is what we run. The majority of the games that Michigan played, we were in a 4-3 scheme, and we jump out of both of these. This is why I like what we do on defense, and we're able to do both because it creates problems for the offense. So in a 4-3 scheme, now you take 2 big defensive linemen, and they are on your edges, okay? And they're going to play outside the tackles. And what Michigan does is we will also drop those guys at times to put them in coverage. But you have 2 big guys that rush the quarterback on the edge. Now, your 3 technique, Denny, is a guy that plays between the guard and the tackle. He lines up between the guard and the tackle, and his responsibility is number one, he has to protect linebackers. A three technique plays between the guard and the tackle. He's got to protect linebackers. Don't let the guard get off on the linebacker. Try not to let the tackle get a clean shot at a linebacker. You got to play the B gap. Number one, don't get knocked off the ball on a double team. Okay, you cannot have your three technique or your one technique get knocked off the ball. So they got to play the B gap and don't get knocked off the ball. That's the two biggest things you're asking from those guys. The one technique now, he's playing between the guard and the center. Okay, yep. He's playing between the guard and the center, and he's going to play into the guard from in that gap. So he's called a one technique, who plays into the guard, but he's between the guard center gap. He's in the A gap. He lines up in the A gap. So, but the big thing with both of these guys, Denny, and their responsibilities are very similar. And that number one, you got to protect the linebackers. Number two, you cannot get double teamed and get knocked back off the ball. And then you got to be able to play your gap when people are reaching and trying to. There's two different blocks. You're going to have what I call a reach and a scoop. They're going to try to get you blocked and get the linebacker blocked also with. The bottom line is, as a three technique or a one technique, if one of your guys gets off on the linebacker, you better make the play. You want to make that double team stick to you, so that the linebacker can make the play. If that makes sense to you.
Why isn't a nose tackle and nose guards? Why aren't those guys pretty much interchangeable? What's the difference there? You know, they're both right down there by the center, and I get the alignment, you know, right over the center or right in the gaps, but there's a difference between those two.
No, Danny, to tell you the truth, those positions are pretty interchangeable. In general, in my experience, I might want a little more athleticism at the three technique, but you're not going to put Hinton or Mozzie Smith on the edge like Hutchinson and Ojabo. Now, those physical traits are different than what you want inside. From my experience as a coach, the 1 and 3 techniques are very similar. You would have been a 1 or 3 technique, Danny. I could tell looking at your physique. You're just a big, strong dude. You'd have been playing in that gap. You know, it's a different kind of guy in there. You got to have more. That's why I was worried about Jenkins, because Jenkins was playing on the outside, and now they moved him inside. I was worried, did he have enough meat on him? You know, because you're getting double teamed there, and you cannot get knocked off the ball. So you got to have size. You don't need as much speed as an edge guy, but you got to be able to take on the double team and not get knocked off the ball. And you got to be athletic enough to protect the linebackers and play your gap. So a 3 technique lines up outside the guard, between the guard and the tackle. He plays into the guard, and he's got to protect the linebacker. A 1 technique plays in the A gap between the center and the guard, and he's playing into the guard, also protecting linebackers. So linebackers love big guys that keep those big fat offensive linemen off of them. You remember hearing Spielman talk about Jerry Ball all the time?
Yeah.
Spielman loved Jerry Ball because he kept him free. And that's anytime you saw James Ross have a great game or Junior, when you saw them guys running around making plays, I guarantee you Mozzie Smith and Hinton also did a good job occupying blocks.
Yeah, you know, Chris Jenkins reminds me of a guy that got drafted in the same draft as Adamican Sue. You know, Sue was playing for Nebraska, but Gerald McCoy from the Sooners. He was a taller guy. He seemed like he had more of a Jenkins frame, but he did play inside there. And for Michigan, it wouldn't be a surprise to you if Mozzie Smith would be an easy one to say that he was going to line up as a starter. But Jenkins, as an inside guy, when we're talking about the opener for Michigan, and then maybe a combination after that of the guys inside from, you know, Graham to Benny to Rooks, any of the other guys as well, right?
Yeah, Danny, you're right. And you know what I said this. I think we're going to get more pass rush from both of those positions this year. You know, people talk about losing Hutchinson and Ojabo, but I think we're going to get more pass rush because Jenkins he's got a little more speed than Hinton did. And The only question is, does he have the butt? Does he have the size to take on the double team and keep those linebackers clean? But I like what we have at the 3 and the 1. We got guys that interchange in there, and when we want to jump into that 3-4, those guys will also be trained to play over the center and play that team that technique. Because I love the fact that we can jump into the 3-4 when we play Iowa, when we play Wisconsin, and some of those deals. It's a good. This is the same things we did with Coach McCartney. Coach McCartney we were real good in the 3-4, but we had a little bit of 4-3 stuff if we needed it.
What about, I can, it doesn't have to go back. You don't have to go back too far to remember Rich Rodriguez and I don't know if they were calling him a scout or they were talking about maybe it was it wasn't a 2-5, but maybe
3-3-5, Danny. It was a
3-3-5.
Terrible.
Why was that different than the Viper that Don Brown? What were the differences there?
Okay, the 3-3-5 in this, I knew we were in trouble. Okay, he ran the 3-3-5 at West Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay, but guess what? Michigan State running 3 tight ends, Wisconsin running 3 tight ends. Those teams weren't in the AAC, whatever the hell league he was in, the ACC, whatever. So when he got the job at Michigan, a 3-3-5 placed 3 defensive linemen, okay, 3 linebackers, and then 5 secondary guys. They're going to have 2 safeties. Okay, so you're going to have 1 less big guy or 1 less big linebacker. So the question is, yes, it's a good defense versus the spread people. That defense would have been good defending Rich Rod's offense. Okay, it would have been good defending. I actually saw him beat Oregon one time when he was at Arizona, and you're going to have success because I think structurally, schematically, the 3-3-5 is good versus spread teams. But that doesn't help you against Michigan State and Wisconsin. In fact, I used to win a lot of money betting when he was at Arizona against Stanford. He wasn't going to come close to beating Stanford with that defense. So the 3-3-5, Denny, there are some people running it. The guy at West Virginia was running it. There's some people running similar schemes to that. And a lot of people are doing it against like the Mike Leach. But the 3-3-5, it's good versus spread. It's soft. You ain't never beaten Wisconsin with a 3-3-5. You ain't beaten the old Michigan State teams with a 3-3-5. You wouldn't beat Michigan running a 3-3-5 what we're running now. So
not last year.
Yeah, not with the things we're doing. I don't think you're gonna. We would be licking our chops if the old Michigan 3-3-5 defense came into Michigan Stadium to defend our offense.
Well, the Viper was a hybrid safety linebacker? Because I remember it was before your days. Don Dufek was called a wolf, but then a Viper under Don Brown. The difference is there.
Yeah, with Don Brown's basic defense was a 4-3, okay, but he had a guy who was maybe an undersized linebacker, so he would have had 2 big linebackers, 4 big defensive linemen, and then he would have had an undersized, like a Jabril Peppers type guy as a 3rd linebacker, but that guy would have been also used in coverage a lot.
Yeah.
So that way, if he wants to rush 4 and have 4 big linemen, see when Don Brown got hired and he was talking about his scheme, the first thing that came to mind for me was, and I guarantee you this is what it was, were we going to have enough size and strength to stop Wisconsin and Michigan State? Because we're playing with 1 smaller linebacker, and I was really concerned with that. And then we went up there and beat them. We did go up to East Lansing and beat them. We defended them pretty well. I don't know if you remember that year.
Yeah, well, Peppers is a hell of a player, so
he's a hell of a player, but still, Danny, he's only like 205 pounds. I don't know, 208 pounds. So I was concerned. When Wisconsin and Michigan State come out with, double tight, 3 tight ends, fullback, I backs, and now we got that same personnel in there. Are we going to be able to? So basically, we were a 4-3 scheme under Don Brown, but he had a safety hybrid guy working in it at the 3rd linebacker position that gave him flexibility to do a lot of different things, because now you could put that guy in coverage and ask him to do things that a 230-pound linebacker can't do. Like, there's an upside to it and there's a downside, just like what Georgia did to Junior in the bowl game. They isolate him. They come out empty, and then they put that guy in coverage. You know what I mean?
What about Dufek? He was just so good as a safety. He was big enough to play the run, but also fast enough to be a safety.
Yeah, that was Donnie Dufek played. I know Donnie. He played the wolf position, and that position, it would be that position at that time would have been very similar to Don Brown's Viper, because that guy was a he was a strong. The position was strong safety, and it was a guy that would be in the run support game, had to come up and make tackles in the run support, but also be athletic enough to maybe cover a deep third or that kind of thing. But it was a physical player.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the beauty of the McDonald now Minter defense. So you're talking about the interchangeable parts there, but last year there were times that Michigan would put it seemed like 3 safeties in addition, because Rod Moore, you have to do some of that, and when you have Dax Hill too, and if you're going to like a nickel or even dime packages there, you're putting extra safeties out there. Michigan had some of that going.
Yeah, we do a lot of that, because when teams are bringing, you get them 3rd and 9, they might bring in 4 receivers.
Yeah.
And, and I think Michael Barrett is a guy he's a guy that's in the game in some of those passing situations. He's still, in a way, I think they're utilizing him as some type of Viper type position, because he's going to be in on some of the, when they have 4 wide personnel or, more little guys in a passing situation. He's going to be in the game, and we have the ability to adjust to those kind of formations. And you're exactly right.
All right. Yeah. And I know that Keon Sabb, which is the true freshman, they were experimenting in the spring with him maybe being a linebacker or safety, trying to figure out where the best fit. And, maybe he'll learn both of those positions. We'll see. Maybe they don't have to make a decision until next year, because he might not get on the field. Maybe he will. Look, Rod Moore, nobody thought he was going to get on the field, and he wasn't even in for spring last year.
Yeah, you just don't know when you recruit. When you recruit guys, you don't have, you think but you just don't know. Once they get in the game and they start competing against big time players and school and all the mental responsibilities and all, you just don't know how guys are going to respond mentally, physically, and that's the key, man. That's the magic about recruiting, trying to figure that out.
Well, let me ask you the big news. It seems like it's been a couple days, but it was just yesterday. Jay Wright, somebody that I know that you like. You mentioned him a number of times. You liked him as a coach at Villanova. They beat Michigan. They went to the Final Four, and yet nobody says anything bad about Jay Wright. And here he is. He ups and retires. So I wanted to ask you. I asked the Wolverine Den, which is part of the Maize and Blue Review, for people's top 3 non-Michigan football coaches, and people didn't just run to their keyboards and have a bunch of names there, because if you're most people watching this, yourself, so but they're so focused on Michigan. You usually like coaches that, well, and you mentioned McCartney. He coached at Michigan and he went out to Colorado. Well, you were probably a fan of Colorado and McCartney when he was out there, weren't you, Jim?
Yeah, Danny, the way I evaluate a coach is, Jim Harbaugh has said it right. Ryan Day was born on third base. Okay, I evaluate the guys that went into a chaotic, dysfunctional, losing situation and go in there and win. And then, so you asked me to name my top 3.
That's right.
And then, so the things, the first, who went into a situation where they inherited nothing, they had no players, they had chaos, they had and whatever, and then possibly the guy did it 2 or 3 times. So he proved himself that he could do it. Then he did it a couple times on top of that. My first 2 are real easy for me. My first 2 guys, and they're both Alabama. Okay, Bear Bryant is my number 1, and the reason I say he's number 1, the guy went to Kentucky. They had never won. He makes them a winner. Then he goes to Texas A&M. They hadn't won. He makes him a winner. And then, of course, what he did for all that time at Alabama. So my reasoning is if I'm coaching at Michigan, who's the last guy I want to get the Michigan State job? And it would have been a guy like Bear Bryant. Okay? That would have been the last guy. If I'm coaching at Michigan, I want to get that job. So the second guy on my list is the same guy, is the same school. I actually met Saban. I heard him speak years ago. I mean, he was only at Toledo for 1 year as a head coach. He was at Michigan State. Now, he was average at Michigan State, but he did start to change things there. And then and then he goes to LSU. They hadn't won in 30-some years. And he builds them up. And then he goes to Alabama, and what he's done there consistently, to consistently win at that level. So those are my two top guys because, again, that's the last guy I would want. Again, if I'm at Michigan and someone said, okay, who's good? Nick Saban right now is the last guy I would want Michigan State to hire. What do you got there?
Well, I want to watch one pitch of Miguel Cabrera.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's going.
We won't look at every at bat, but how about one pitch here? One pitch. Let's see if we can get lucky and get Mr. 3000 here on the first pitch. Oh, I swung and missed. So. But for a second, I couldn't tell.
So yeah, Danny, those are my top two because my rationale is who would I not want to get the job at my rival school because those guys are proven winners that could take over something that was bad and make it good. Now, my number 3 guy is tough.
All right.
Okay. My number 3 guy is real tough because there's a whole bunch of candidates. You said non-Michigan. I'll tell you a guy that would be on my list. And for the same reasons as Yost. If you ever looked at what Yost did at all them different schools, the guy was at 5 different schools before Michigan, and he won everywhere he went. McCartney won. He took over Colorado. They were terrible. Brian Kelly's won everywhere he's been. He was at Grand Valley. He won. Central, he won. Cincinnati, he won. Notre Dame. And I guarantee you, Nick Saban's not happy he got hired at LSU. Howard Schnellenberger recruited me. He built up Miami. They were nothing. And then he goes to, he's a guy that could be on the list. Jim Tressel, guy won at, he won at Youngstown. Then he goes over to, Lou Holtz has won. He won at Arkansas. He won at Minnesota. He won at Notre Dame. Now, he didn't win at South Carolina. Urban Meyer won 4 different places. Bowling Green, he won. I heard him speak when he just got hired. I heard Urban Meyer speak and his coaching staff when they just got hired at Bowling Green. And I was like, man, these guys are going to win. They just sound like them. And then he won at Utah. He won at Florida. So that 4th guy is really, really hard.
Did you put Urban Meyer on the list? He's number 3.
I can't do it, but because he's Urban Meyer, but because he had that last stop in the NFL. But man, yeah, Denny, it's you got Bobby Bowden too, but he only did it at one place. So right. I'm going to go Holtz. Because Holtz won at Arkansas. He took over nothing there. He took over Minnesota. I remember coaching against that Minnesota, playing against that team. They were good when he got there. They were a different team. Then he went and did what he did at Notre Dame. Yost would be number 3, but you're not letting me put Michigan guys in here because I would really like our listeners to go see what Yost did, and he's the guy that put Michigan on the map. That guy went to like 4 different schools before Michigan, and he won at every single one of them. Guy was unbelievable.
Yeah, Yost and Fritz Chrysler. I mean, it'd be easy. If you do it for Michigan, it's pretty easy. You start ripping off all kinds of names there. But
yeah, but Denny, let me tell you, Yost put Michigan on the map. He's the guy that made Michigan what it is. And the other guys, we already had a tradition now. We had the big stadium, man. We had a tradition that Yost started. Bo always used to talk about Yost. He didn't talk about them other guys. Yost is the one that put Michigan on the map.
I hear you. Now, when I put my 3 on, I went with my favorites. Not that they were great coaches, that these were just my favorite guys, mostly because of my interactions actually with all 3 of them. And I'll put the list up here. And I didn't put I forgot the N on Ben Braun's name here. I went to Eastern Michigan, Scar, and Ben Braun was the head coach. He's the winningest all-time basketball coach at Eastern Michigan. He was great to me, and he went to Wisconsin. I always thought he would take the Wisconsin job, but then he went out to Cal and at Rice. He's a broadcaster now, but I got Ben Braun as number one on my list. Mark Few, it's amazing, with coaches, Scar, sometimes you can meet a guy for 5 minutes and you can walk away and you say, well, why would you be a fan of Mark Few? I met him for 5 minutes and talked with him, and the guy made a lasting impression on me. I root for him, Mark Few of Gonzaga. And what might be a real surprise to everyone on here is John Cooper of Ohio State. I was broadcasting from the Big Ten coaches meeting back in the day, and John Cooper, as most people would know, would have had a terrible record against Michigan. It was mocked by the Wolverine fans and everything else. And John Cooper, this is after losing to him in 95, 96, 97. This would have been, after that, I saw him at the Big Ten coaches meeting and said, hey, coach, and I expected him to say, yeah, and not show up. I said, hey, would you come on a radio show? And he's like, where are you broadcasting out of? I said, Ann Arbor. And I expected him to say no or say yes and not show up. But John Cooper showed up and went on live on Ann Arbor radio back in the day. So I'll give it to Coop, one of my favorites. John Cooper, Mark Few, Ben Braun for my three there, Scar.
Yeah, Danny, I was thinking about production. And if you want nice guys I really like listening to, I like Mike Leach. I love him. I think he's entertaining. He
is entertaining, yep.
I remember Lee Corso recruited me back in the day, and he was an interesting guy. He was a funny guy. He was great as an analyst when his mind was sharp. And I like Holtz in the studio, too. I like those guys are entertaining guys. I got to meet, who was George Perlis. I got to meet George Perlis later on when I was coaching. He was a great guy, man. Fun guy. I could see why guys wanted to play for him. He was I could see why he could recruit. He was a good guy, fun guy to be around.
Fun guy. He said bowl games are like hams. He's never had a bad ham. Remember he said that. Yeah, entertaining guys, fun guys. That could be. That's why I put favorite in there. I agree. The Houndstooth and Saban. Those guys are great coaches for sure. So it all depends on how you want to go through it. Lou Holtz, I think he ran the veer there at Arkansas.
Well, that's what everybody was running back in the mid 70s. Everybody was running that stuff. Just that's how football coaches are, man. We copy each other. What's the latest stuff? What's working? What are defenses having trouble with? And then the defensive coaches are like, okay, how do we stop this guy? What is everybody doing to stop some of these offenses? So they copy each other and they adjust. It's just like business, just like warfare, man. What's the latest stuff? How do we beat the opponent? What's the newest technology?
And I bet that Jay Wright would be on a lot of people's list. The reason that I asked you for your favorite coaches, because there's not many, especially when you just come off of if you're a Michigan fan, you just come off of losing to the Wildcats. Of course, a few years ago, lost to them in the championship game. You'd say you might, hate a guy like Jay Wright, but I never heard anybody say anything like that they hated Jay Wright. Everybody respects him, like the way that he ran his program. And, giving him props now that he's retired. I think he'll end up coaching in the pros in a year or two. And
I respect him. I like the coaches, Danny, that win and they do it legally, and they're that's the kind of guy. Those guys that win on a regular basis, they do it without cheating. They're good. They make our job easy, as they don't tolerate and let their players do crazy things that make us high school coaches have to correct it. Well, I saw it on Saturday, coach. The guy was doing this. He was, whatever. I like those guys that make my job easy as a junior high school coach. The guys that win and they do it ethically. Those are the coaches I like.
All right, Scar, let's go through the head coaches down through the years. And you've had some you're not old enough to remember Yost. Or Chrysler, I don't think, but Schembechler, you played for him. Let's start there, then work our way up to Jim Harbaugh. From Bo to Jim, your coaching connections there. Let's start it out with Schembechler. Biggest thing, I don't know if you want to say the biggest thing you learned from him, things that you learned from him, things that you adopted from the different coaches, however you want to approach it. Schembechler.
Danny, I spent 5 years with him. I spent 5 years with Coach Mo and 5 years with Coach Lloyd. I could talk about all these guys a long time, but I'm going to just hit – Coach Schembechler was just brilliant. all them guys were just really, really smart guys. For number one, he's from a leader. What I want from my leader more than anything is that he's smarter than the other guy. If I'm sitting on the sideline and we're playing a football game, I want my guy smarter than their guy. Okay. He hired the right coaches. He knew who to hire. So he was smart there. He knew how to recruit guys. He was good recruiting. He was good in the living room, talking to parents. And then he was good with X's and O's. He was good motivating your team and individually. He was good the guy was just really, really good in all areas. So he was funny. He had a sense of humor. So I'm just gonna briefly hit on each guy because I could talk for all these guys for a long time. But brilliant man, great leader, would have been successful in anything. Knew how to I don't think he ever fired a coach. I don't think he ever fired an assistant coach. That's something that's that matters. That you have an eye for talent as with your coaches and who you recruit. So brilliant man. Coach Mo was the defensive coordinator. My last four, I had McCartney my first year, but Mo was another brilliant guy, great motivator, smart. The more I realized how smart he was defensively was when I really got done coaching and I started looking at things and digesting things that he was able to predict and how to stop certain offenses. He was good with the players. He was disciplined, but he was fun. He had a sense of humor. He was fun to be around. Made practice fun at times, the grind of practice. But he could get mean. Both those guys could get mean in a minute, Schembechler and Moeller, when they had to be. Sometimes as a coach, you got to get mean. You can't just be nice all the time. Coach Carr was the secondary coach when I played, and I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. I saw him coach his players. I know that his players respected the heck out of him. He was the kind of coach that, even though he wasn't my position coach, I respected the hell out of him. I liked him. He was good with everybody. He was tough on his players. He was really, really smart. You knew he was going to move up and be something good. But Lloyd, all these guys are high character guys, man. Lloyd's really a high character guy. I coached against his son, and I've known him a long time. Smart, all smart guys, man. Smart, good communicators. You got to be able to communicate to motivate a team and motivate individually, and then go into a living room and recruit a parent and recruit that. So all those guys had those skills. They all came to I remember all three of those guys came to one of my basketball games when I was a senior in high school. Coach Carr and Coach Mo. And then, Rich Rod, I shook his hand once. I saw him coach. I think he, he was running that offense and people weren't really knew how to defend it initially, Denny. You know what I mean? He was scoring all them points, but his last game at West Virginia, Pitt beat him. And that's when I was watching him score all these points and I saw Pitt beat him and he only scored like 9 points. And I'm like, I think it ran its course. People are starting to figure out how to stop him. He had the soft defense. He didn't recruit defense, and it was I didn't play for the guy. I wasn't in the meeting room with him, but I just thought that people figured out his offense. I didn't think the defense was stout enough to stop the physical run games in the Big Ten. And, he struggled at Arizona. He struggled. The offense, people are figuring out a lot of the stuff he's doing. But,
yeah, I thought that he needed he needed that quarterback. He needed the trigger man right away, and it didn't happen for him. So that put him behind the 8 ball. He also didn't get great support from the previous regime and people around Ann Arbor. And then he didn't ingratiate himself coming in with embracing like the Ohio State rivalry or the Michigan culture. That was just a bad fit there. And you're right, the defensive side, he would even make fun of defense. He'd say things like, yeah, I kick the door open once in a while and take a look in at the meeting room. And people are like, what? What's this guy joking around about not being able to play defense? So, he was a little bit behind the 8 ball there. Some of it his own doing when he came in. Just guys come in, you try to change philosophies, and not everybody was on board, so it was almost like it wasn't going to work.
Danny, I don't think people care where you came from. You get the job at Michigan. I don't think people really care as long as you win. Okay, you got to win, and he didn't win. His offense was soft. But
people did care. Scar, they didn't. Carr didn't endorse him. He wanted his own guy. He wanted Mike DeBoer, but after he lost to Appy State and after he lost to Oregon, he got his power taken away.
I totally understand that. Yeah. I totally understand that. When you don't win at the end, you don't have the right to hire your predecessor, and I think that's
right. And you have to have a Michigan. People all pull for each other, and not everybody was pulling for Rodriguez. Maybe it would have worked anyways, but not everybody was on board. Saying, hey, anything that you need, Rich Rod, we'll be here for you. And then he didn't have the quarterback, and you have to have that certainly in his offense, and so he was up against it.
Yeah, we can go around and around. We can talk about that for an hour, but then Brady.
Right.
I think if Brady got the job after Lloyd, I think he would have had a lot more success because he would have had the big quarterback who wouldn't have transferred. He would have had all them linemen that wouldn't have left. You had Boren's kid left. You had the big kid. What was his name? 6'7" quarterback. What was his name?
Allen.
Yeah, he left. I think Brady would have had a lot more success had he got the job after Lloyd. I know Brady. I worked at camp with him for many years. High character, great defensive line coach, great defensive coach. You got to remember, Brady left Michigan. He built Ball State. He made him a winner. He was a proven winner. Then he goes to San Diego State. He builds them. He's a proven winner. He won twice at two different places. And then he comes to Michigan, and the problem, what Brady ran into more than anything, Denny, though? Michigan State was at the height of their program. They haven't been that good since Duffy won in 66 and 65, whatever that was. And then Ohio State was at the height of their program too. I mean, to dominate like they've been. So our biggest rivals, Brady had to deal with them at their height. And but Brady was a great coach. I learned a lot from him, working with him, but then now Jim is, he's getting it going, and it's a tough grind, and but we keep getting better. He's recruiting good, and I think our program is solid right now, man.
Yeah, I do too, and that's I think the thing that you underline, and I think that, last year, I mean, you're only as good as your last year and how you're going to be in this upcoming year, but this offseason is different, and we know the reasons. And they rang the bell, and it was a fantastic year, so people should feel good leading up. And they also have a very good team on paper coming back, so it's not like, it's not a feeling that it was just a one-off, that Michigan got lucky or something, that, hey, they ran into one. They got it. And now they've got a good thing going. Sustaining it's harder to do than getting there. We all know that, but I think things look good for Michigan football right now under Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, we a lot of good players, man. Brad Hawkins and Hill, and all these guys that were just had really good years, but they had been there a long time, and guys got to step up now. And you got to remember, we beat Nebraska by that much. I mean, it was a close game.
Penn State by that much.
We beat Penn State by that much. Who's going to make those plays? So the talent difference is still, it's really, really thin with us and Penn State. These other guys are getting good players too. And it's got to come down to players that are going to make plays and coaches that are going to coach them up and have great schemes and put our players, give our players advantages, man. Josh Gaddis called some good games last year. He put defenses in conflict. He did some good creative stuff. And we've got to be creative on offense. You just can't say we're going to pound it in there. And no, man, you got to put them in conflict. Both sides of the ball, coaches have to have schemes that give the other coach headaches regardless of talent. You know what I mean, Denny? You got to be the kind of coach. We want our coaches, our coordinators, to be the kind of coordinators that the opponent looks at and says, damn, I don't want to deal with that regardless of talent. You know what I mean? They're just a headache because they do stuff. They give you headaches. I've coached against guys like that, and those are the good coaches. Then the guys that are simple and they don't give you problems, that's who you want to go against. And we got to continue to be headaches for the opponent's coordinators with good players.
Reminds me of playing poker when I sit down and I got a guy who's always raising me and re-raising me. And then when I finally got something, he's throwing in his cards. That's the kind of coach you want to be. You want to keep them guessing and always have them re-raising and always put them all in. And then, is what you're talking about, put you in conflict. Great job, Scar. You got any final thoughts here as we ran through all of this?
No, it's a lot of good. We're feeling good about Michigan, but our fans got to know, man. That the difference in winning is thin. Our players are lifting. Ben Herbert has got to make it. We got to out-strength coach him right now. Right now, we got to out-strength coach him. And I see Juwan's in on some big players. We got to get 2 good transfers. We need a guard that can shoot. We need a 3 or 4 position guy that can shoot. So then we'll have a real solid team. But everything's good, man. Cabrera get his hit?
Not yet. Okay. I'm going to watch it and hit some golf balls. Great job, Scar. It's the highlight of my Thursday, being able to connect with you and talk Michigan. So
yeah, we'll try to scheme it up and teach our listeners a few more football techniques and assignments and responsibilities if they're liking it.
They like it. Sounds great. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.